the factors involved. There are several ways to project these. First, experts. If you're working in industry, first thing would be to go to the accounting department because those guys enjoy that kind of stuff. They know the trends. That's one way to project them, and they know how the market behaves. Also, our textbook has a very handy table, table 10.1, given by Humphreys. It's a very useful way of, he's laid out all the variation of the forecasts given in profitability of each factor involved in the cost estimation. Looking at this table, the most substantial variability factor was the sales volume, because you go from -50 to 150. Obviously, that range is a very inexact method, but as I said again, taking a look at the market trends and consulting some kind of accountant or stock market specialist, you can get a better insight and know how to make a decision. Some methods in forecasting the uncertainty in some of your factors. This dives into the basic macroeconomic theory of supply and demand. And for our purpose of this discussion, we'll be assuming that the market is at equilibrium, which means the demand and the supply are in unity and the cost is where they cross. And from the supply and demand curves, the common trend is essentially a representation of human nature and how humans tend to react to market. As the supply increases, the quantity of a product will increase as well, and as the demand decreases, the quantity is going to increase as well. Another method in forecasting uncertainty is using historical data over a period of time. Obviously, if you have if you can make a trend in the way the data is formed, you can get a linear least squares analysis and get a trend line, and you can make some kind of estimation as to how that's going to turn out. Be wary though, long-term accuracy is best used in that method. However, short-term it's best used over a long term where you have a lot more data, obviously. And so, obviously, looking at the forecasting, it's very hard to estimate the future. So basically, that conclusion was it's a very inexact method, and it's kind of hard to predict the future. Some methods we use in risk quantification. We have three methods. First, the scenario analysis, which is the old best case versus worst case scenarios. You're going to take the profitability criterion and compare it. Sensitivity analysis, which is basically an explicit parameter dependent effect on the profitability. And lastly is a pretty extensive probabilistic approach used to quantify risk. That's obviously going to involve some kind of computational application. So first, in quantifying risk, scenario risk analysis, first step you do is you identify the parameters that have variation involved, and you assign the worst and the best scenario involved for each variable involved in the cost estimation. And you have your base case, and you compare your worst and the best to the base case, and then you can make some kind of decision based on that and how they turn out. Obviously, this is kind of a pessimistic versus optimistic method. Next method is sensitivity risk analysis. This is parameter dependent showing the variation. And basically, the mathematical model breaks it down to taking the partial derivative of your profitability criteria. For instance, in this case, I'm using a net present value. Take the partial derivative with respect to the variable of concern, n being the total number of variables you're using in calculating your cost estimation, and S1 is just basically your sensitivity coefficient. And how you'd evaluate that was you'd take to evaluate the change of the net present value, you'd sum all the sensitivity coefficients and their change. Lastly, the probabilistic approach is, like I said, is a very extensive approach. You're going to be using some kind of computational apparatus such as Excel, because it involves a high number of data points. And it's basically a 7-step procedure. First, you're going to define your parameters that involve uncertainty. Next, you're going to assign a random number to each one. There's a function within Excel you can assign a random number. And then you're going to identify the correct probability distribution of that variable, whether it be normal distribution or triangular distribution, what have you. And then after that, you're going to take the resulting probability, the criterion. Here I chose net present value. And next, you're going to collect the multiple probability projects of each value. And then from this, you can form a histogram and a cumulative probability curve. And then you can look at that and evaluate the results and make a decision as needed. Profit margin analysis. I close up this presentation with offering a very useful tool, screening your profit margin, which is really simple, but it's an easy tool to use. It's the sum of the revenue of your products minus revenue of the raw cost, and that gives you your profit margin and see where you stand. So in conclusion, to give a summary of what we covered today in profitability analysis, your profitability criteria, discounted and non-discounted, was discussed. And those criteria were time, money, and interest rate. Optimum equipment alternative selection was discussed with cost equivalency, incremental economic analysis with net present value, EAFC methods, and lastly we discussed profitability and risk and how that was evaluated and the parameters involved with that. And with that, that's it. Questions?